Hey folks, Robert Quinn here, your LinkedIn semiconductor industry content provider, for another show with Beyond the Wafer. My co-host Robert Wolf. Robert, how are you doing? It's good to see you
Oh, you're
today.
bringing me on already. All right. That was an early intro. Awesome. Robert, how you doing?
Good. I just wanted to, what an amazing show that we're going to have today with Ricardo Mendoza, and I'm loving this talk about everything that we're how it integrates into everything that we've been talking about in the past. Love for this. So happy to have both of y'all joining us on the show today, Robert.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ricardo Mendoza, happens to be one of my older friends in the industry. In fact, I remember meeting him back in Thailand. And in fact, maybe we'll have a talk about this when he joins the call. But I remember meeting him back in Thailand. He was good friends with my first boss in the industry, Ricardo Salvetti. And they took me out for dinner. And I had no idea what was going on. so Ricardo goes back like way. I want to say one of the big open source people of the world, Ricardo Salvetti and Ricardo Mendoza, and so they were just talking gibberish when I had just joined the industry to me. So I look forward to asking him some questions about open source. I look forward to asking him some questions, of course, about Pantacor and Pantavisor Linux, the company for which he is the CEO of, as well as several other, I think, some fun questions we have lined up for him. Robert Quinn, do you mind if we do a quick little recap of last month's, or I should say the last episode we had?
Absolutely, that was an amazing show.
Yeah.
Technologies and everything that we were able to speak about there. That was an amazing show.
Yeah, so we've had two of these so far. This is our third Beyond the Wafer. So we've gone beyond the wafer at this point. We have had Raul Vergara. He was on our first episode. That was the CRO of Thistle Technologies. And then followed up by Pete Bernard, who is the CEO of Edge AI Foundation. And Edge AI Foundation is just an awesome foundation focused on basically, I want to say, like bringing the folks who are standardizing or working to push Edge AI as far as possible, as quickly as possible, without being irresponsible. So I think that was a pretty cool talk with Pete. I'm going to share the link here to that one in just a moment, and let me grab that real quick. But before that, though, let me ask you, Robert, are you familiar with Yocto, Open Embedded, Containerized Linux? Because that's what we're about to dive into.
I wouldn't say it's at the top of my, I'm the hardware guy, right? And the semiconductor equipment guy. So it's a little bit not totally in my realm, but I am definitely interested because after speaking with Ricardo and listening to everything that he had to say, I'm super excited to learn more about it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then I think it's time to bring Ricardo into the mix here. So should I bring him up onto the stage?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. There we go. Ricardo, welcome to Beyond the Wafer. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So the way me and Robert usually like to start these off is, we're not going to push it, but we have up to an hour to talk. But we like to get to know you first, like your origin story. Who are you? What do you do? Do you like skiing on the weekends? I don't know.
Well, there's not a lot of skiing in Madrid, but I do like it when it's possible, right? So, origin story. Well, like you were mentioning before, I mean, the origin has different stages, right? I think the latest origin was maybe when you and I met, as you said. That was almost more than 9 years ago. That was in Bangkok in 2016. That dinner you're mentioning. Right? I think you were just starting at Linara at the time and doing technical writing and all the stuff, and you were really eager to get in the sauce of the whole thing, right? And I think that was the most recent era, let's say, in my own personal little, let's say, work journey, right? That's also the year that we founded Pantacor, right? And that we left, that I left what used to be the place I was working at before, Canonical, right? But much before that, well, I think it's always been a journey of, tinkering and playing with things and trying to learn when I guess when it was kind of like harder, more difficult to learn on your own, right? I actually come originally from South America, from Venezuela, right? You know that, Rob. And back there, it wasn't really in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, or just flat 2000. It wasn't very common to explore this type of topics, right? Like, let alone, like embedded engineering or, embedded Linux at all, right? Even in the wide world, embedded Linux at the time was kind of like very early days, right? And somehow I arrived into, don't ask me, well, actually, I will tell you how, but I arrived into the world of embedded, of Linux MIPS, right? Early on days of MIPS architecture, right? When it was still owned by Silicon Graphics. Back then, they used to do a lot of investment in the open source community. I mean, because they had their IRIX thing going on, right? But they knew that wasn't going to scale if they wanted to break into other industries, right? So they went all in with Linux, right? And well, not all in, but a side investment, but a lot of money into it. and that precipitated or created a huge community of open source built around it, and some random chance, I ended up landing a very old PDA, during the PDA phase of the world, right, in my hands, which was it's a Philips Nino was the name of the model back then, early 2000s, and it had a MIPS CPU, right, based off of R4000 architecture, right, very simple ISA at the time, but powerful. It was the same thing that was in the little SGI boxes that were all the rage, at the time. If you remember, SGI boxes were used for rendering, right? So like ILM, for example, at that time the new Star Wars movies, right, prequels, everything was rendered on SGI boxes, right? So they were kind of a bit of the rage, other than the normal SGI stuff, right? And that, it sort of cascaded into multiple things. It ended up landing me into different Linux communities and Gentoo Linux and Debian, some friends here and there, and eventually Canonical, right? So, and then that bridged into that dinner with you in 2016, and here we are.
I mean, Canonical's, I want to say, a company that a lot of people would know about, right? Like Ubuntu
Sure.
is the most used, if anything, I want to say, consumer Linux distribution. And so, when you think like students who are out there, which is a massive amount of people, Ubuntu's kind of like that go-to distro. So when you think about getting a job for an open source company, Canonical feels like that company that most people would want to go work for. I mean, like, was that like your thoughts when you went to go work there, or were you kind of sought after, or why'd you
Not
end
exactly.
up?
I mean, there were others, right? There was at the time, MIPS Technologies Inc. was still going on, right? And like, I had very good experience with them, with MIPS architecture and Linux MIPS and so on. So it would have been a relatively interesting place to land in, right? And I wanted to do embedded work, right? But actually, Canonical was the only company at the time that was very open in terms of how they hired people, right, and where they hired people. So Canonical has always had a motto of, we get the best talent wherever they are, right, regardless of the challenges to get them, right. They have to be employed as remote employees or contractors or whatever. Like they will just, it doesn't matter if you're on the surface of the moon, right? I mean, if you're the right person for the job, then they will make it happen, right? And that's why Canonical at the time had the majority of the developers themselves were all remote, right, and all over the world. And we've certainly adopted that. Well, I mean, Linaro, right? Linaro certainly adopted that when Linaro was set up, right? Early days with Mark and everyone at the time. Canonical seeded the original Linaro engineering team in that way, right? And some companies have been adopting that. We certainly did at Pantacor, right? I mean, we have offices, but just for the purposes of receiving Amazon packages, right? we really have the breadth and width of our capacity all over the place, right? I mean, we have people here in Spain, in Germany, in Chile, in India, in China, and like there's people all over, right? And I think that's what makes it. That's what makes those members of the team so valuable, right? I mean, these are people that really want to participate. Let's put it that way, and to add their grain of sand, which ends up being castle, right? And there's a lot of power in the willingness or willfulness of people to participate in a broader team or group or vision, right? That they really share with, right? And when you find someone that might be in a place where opportunities are not necessarily the best, right? But their mind is number one, right? Then that really shows, right? I mean, it's unique, right? Some, without going into other topics, right? But some people don't necessarily they see what they're doing as just a means to an end. But sometimes what you're doing actually, well, it is the journey, right? So it needs to be fun, and you need to feel you're adding value, right?
For gosh, how do I put it? Like, I remember when getting hired at Lenaro, and one of the big sells is like, oh yeah, it's a remote company, completely work, live wherever you want. And I was just thinking like, wow, this is kind of amazing. I remember going to that Thailand trip, and I remember, wanting to buy a beer, right? Or getting lunch or whatever it was. And I was buying these things, and I remember saying like, no, I'm not going to expense that. And I remember my boss, Ricardo Salvetti, our friend, he was like, heck no, you're not. Like, you are going to expense that. Like, like you are hired because you are valuable, because, we wanted you here, blah, blah, blah. As soon as a company doesn't, like at least cover these certain basic expenses, like they're bringing you to Thailand, right? Like, like
sure.
You wouldn't.
A beer is not going to break the bank.
Exactly. And so like, these are the kind of things that like I started to kind of like recognize, but then I started to realize that working from home is not for everyone. I mean, like,
no.
Like some people can work from home and actually put the right amount of hours in. Some people work from home and just like completely lose the boundaries between work and personal life. And like, that was kind of like me, where like, I'd be sitting there watching a movie with my wife, and my computer right there goes blink, and I'm just like, like, oh, okay, now all of a sudden I'm working while watching a movie, right? And so it's like, some people can't the boundaries become blurred, and then some people don't have the discipline to do it. And so like, you get all these different types of people. I don't know if that was ever, what type of work, what type of at-home worker were you? And you too, Robert Quinn, if you've ever done work from home.
I mean, I think you're right. And to be fair, working from home is kind of like the first step towards entrepreneurship, I would say, because you're in charge, right, of what you deliver and when and how, and if you have to accelerate something and so on, like that. And also depends on the company. Some companies are very relaxed in the sense of time tracking, right? Like, for example, in Pantacor, we don't really care about time tracking, right? I don't really care if you need to go away for a month, right? But if we have some dates that we need to make for some important products, we just need to make them. That's it, right? And usually that lets people self-manage as much as possible, right? And that's why I think it's that example, right? If you're watching that movie and then you grab the laptop and so on, then you certainly need to find a balance there, right? But the balance is not only in time, as we know, right? It's not only like I already put my hours in. The balance is in, well, if it's something important, right, then maybe it needs to be addressed, right? And if it's addressed now, then maybe tomorrow I will address less of the non-important things and take more time off, right? So you do need to balance it, and so it is a bit of a step towards entrepreneurship, right? But it's your own one-person company, right? When you're working from home for a remote company, you're never going into an office. Then at the end of the day, you're really just a consultant, right? Sitting in your own home, right?
Yeah. What about you, Robert Quinn? Did you ever get a chance from working from home, and by chance?
It's really an interesting world, working from home. And one of the biggest challenges, Ricardo, is building a team on a remote basis. I'll never forget, back when I was working at Applied Materials, 97, 98 timeframe, we were the best at what we did, and we had such camaraderie, and with such, just this, we enjoyed working around each other, and we were there day to day, so shoulder to shoulder, working together to get the job done. But we were the best at what we did, and the management was always there to incentivize us and to really push that ecosystem of what do you call it, Robert? The ecosystem of where everybody is on this page of, we are the best of what we do. We are awesome. We love what we do. at the same time, it's not just a job like you were talking about. It's not just a job where you're coming in every day and just to serve a purpose. We were doing it to be the best at what we did and to make the best product in the world. And so that was a really good, cool experience working that. But post 9/11, we've seen this merger into working at home, and a lot of people are now supporting organizations that are there on site, but then there's a lot of people that aren't on site, and it's difficult to keep that same that same camaraderie that we had back in the day. Do you miss that, Robert? Do you understand what I'm talking about? I miss that. I miss that having that within an organization, and us always coming together, and just we would go out to lunch and we would have the lunches together, and we would just knew that we were the best at what we did in the world, and it was great. I loved it, and being remote now for the last few years, it's challenging to still instill that into a company. Do you agree with that?
I've been remote for like a decade now. So like since Lenaro, like even when I left Lenaro for ARM, like one of the things that I went in there interviewing for, I was like, listen, guys, I work from home. Like you're going to get more productivity out of me. I'd rather give you the extra time than every time I have to stop at a stoplight or stop at a stop sign or get stuck in traffic. I'd rather give you guys that time. I'd rather give that time to the company than spend it in traffic. And so like, to me, that was what it was. Even if it was used for ramp up period or whatever it was, like, I mean, I now at this point, if I am more than one car behind someone at a stop sign, I get livid. I get angry. I like my threshold for stress and traffic is so low because of how pampered I've been in terms of working from home. But I have real quick, a question came up here from the audience from LinkedIn, Robert, from your area here. He says, Revanath is asking, are you guys really from a technical background? I say, so I am a studied electrical engineer. Ricardo Mendoza and Robert Quinn have their own credentials. This is not necessarily a dive in deep technical discussion, right? This is us getting to know folks from the C-suite, their leadership styles, and all the cool stuff that they've been going throughout their life. Which led them to leading a company. But we are technical backgrounds. Ricardo Mendoza, you especially, I would imagine, and Robert, you especially as well.
Yeah, I'm an equipment engineer for the last 28 years, working on semiconductor equipment from PVD, ALD, RTP, EPI, all the different, making those computer chips for you, and using the latest equipment. I've been able to learn this industry from the bottom up, and it's absolutely an incredible ecosystem to work in. But yes, definitely we all have our technical background experiences, and it's fun to talk about for sure.
What about you, Ricardo?
Well, me too, right? I mean, from a credentials point of view, I'm technically I like both dual titles, sort of like electronic engineering and computer science, right? So I have quite a bit of background in terms of electronics, and that's what led into embedded, right? It became about software at some point, and realized that electronics is just the core of it, but software is what you can do with it, right? So of course we have a technical background, but we also like to talk.
Yeah, and I think Hari comes in to save the day by saying, "Correct, 100%."
The one thing I've realized over the years is that you can talk tech, right? But I was at the CEO roundtable in Munich, and somebody said, "What do you think about neuromorphic computing?" Asking 7 of the biggest CEOs in the world. All 7 of these CEOs looked at each other and said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh my gosh, they don't speak our language. So how do you speak a language that is CEO, CTO, engineer, and 9th grader all at the same time, right?" And talking tech is, talking tech and talking in a technical term, you lose a lot of people. I tell you what, you and I were talking about it, Robert Wolf. We're talking about that Edge AI conference, and how some of those guys. Wow, I've been in this business for 28 years, and I find it hard to find people that know more than I do about my industry. and these guys are speaking gibberish to me. The tech talk that they were speaking was just out of this world. Now, Ricardo, you probably would have understood them a little bit more than I did, because it was more of a software on the software side. But yeah, how do we speak a language that really resonates with such a larger audience, right? And you think that CEO understands a lot of this engineering tech talk. He doesn't. Talk to the guy about mergers and acquisitions and accounting. I'm sure he understands a lot about that. But being able to talk to him about, the technical stuff and breaking it down to a language that we can all understand, I think that's the greatest part of what we do here. And talking about this technology, this industry, and really making it enjoyable for everybody. So,
with that said, I think it's time to dive into Pantacor and Pantavisor Linux. So, Ricardo, I want to start this off. This is the main segment, everyone. We're going to learn about Pantacor and Pantavisor Linux. Let's look at what the high-level overview is, all right? So, because from now on, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about what led you up to becoming the CEO of Pantacor and Pantavisor Linux, building Pantavisor Linux through Pantacor. We're going to talk about some of the fun things, that you enjoy on the side that also kind of like contributed to your character. But let's first start off by, what is the overview? High level bird's eye view. What is Pantacor, the company? And then what is Pantavisor Linux, the product or the distribution that you've created here? I wouldn't call it the service, but the distribution that you guys have, the product.
There isn't a great word for it, because I think it fits a space that is not completely formed yet, right? That's why you're having a hard time finding a word. But I would call Pantacor the company is just it's a group of people that have, that started with a bit of this sort of bug in their mind about how to make the embedded world evolve, right? Because for better or for worse, embedded software from early 2000s to, I would say 2020 even, is looked the same, right? Linux versions have changed. It has evolved from that point of view. The electronics have gotten better, right? We have cheaper and better RAM, bombs that become more powerful with less money invested, right? But at the end of the day, it's the same process, right? It's the same pipeline of monolithic software and a bunch of guys in a room that they keep getting older, right? And this is a problem. Embedded engineering, especially embedded Linux engineering for legacy products, let's say, is one of those things that sort of wasn't broken. Therefore, it didn't need to improve too much. But it also wasn't seen as a exponential growth vector for anything. And as such, it was sort of like left behind, right? If the wheel works, why do you need to, reinvent it, right? That's it, right? You can make better wheels, but it's still going to look like a wheel, right? And that sort of like ran head first into the connected world, right? 2012, 2011, towards 2016, then all of a sudden connectivity became a lot more ubiquitous, right? The jump from expensive, let's say, regional 3G to all of a sudden like a super fast 4G and mobile cost dropping down and so on. And fiber getting deployed all over, the more dense areas of the world, like Europe and, big cities in the US in the mid 2010s. Then all of a sudden, everything was easy to connect, right? So that problem popped up, and I think we just gathered around a group of people originally from Canonical, myself and my co-founder Alexander Sack, and then we just met some people along the way, right? That shared similar questions about what is this going to go to? Like how is this next stage in the history of embedded Linux going to look like, right? So then, of course, after that comes the product, as you're calling it, which is Pantavisor itself. I don't like to call it Pantavisor Linux too much, because that makes it sound, as you just said, right, like more of a distribution, right? Which anybody says, okay, well, distribution is you take the Linux kernel and you slap things on top and ship it, and that's a distribution, right? Or Yocto might tell you build your own distro, right? With Pantavisor, the core of it is more of a change in mindset of how you assemble a Linux system, right? Instead of taking monolithic solutions or a big OS, and on top of that big OS running applications, right? We just took the concept of containerization and we said, do away with the concept of the big OS, right? And just make everything services that are running, as embedded containers, right? Everything from the core concept of Pantavisor itself, right, which is running in its own isolation in the in the root namespace, right? A networking stack, graphics stacks, any kind of sensor stack or anything. These are just containers running on the system. There isn't a big OS per se, right? Pantavisor does not do connectivity for you, right? It lets you install whatever connectivity container you may want, right? Build your own solution with Conman, with Network Manager, with your own bespoke service, right? It depends on the purpose you're trying to fit, right? You want to build something really small, well, you can get away with a 1-2 megabyte container with Conman linked with muscle libc, for example, right? Build some scaffolding around it in C, and then you have an API over DBOS that allows you to do what Network Manager does without all that overhead, right? And without it looking like a desktop all of a sudden, right? And the ability to mix and match, to build an embedded, from the software point of view, I think it complements the idea of embedded, right? Because embedded equipment is already mix and match, to begin with, right? I mean, when you're putting together a board, right, for a particular project, you get a request for something that has to meet certain specs or achieve certain goals, right? Then you start to think, right? Well, what do I need? I need this memory. I need this type of storage. Does it need to be on chip? Does it what SPU do I need? Do I need dual core? What do I need, right? You start to sort of like assemble things with Lego, right? For all intents and purposes. Of course, there's a lot of smart people over there that are actually, wiring this up together, right? But what you end up is with a mashup of components, right? So when it comes to software, that wasn't so much the case. You had to then that mashup had to go somewhere else, and it went into a black box where a bunch of developers were going to then go and write the software, and they would come up with a big image that didn't really scale very well, right? That worked when you were putting devices that you built once in some factory in China that no one knows about, and it gets shipped around the world and sold, and that device stays in somebody's desk, for 5, 6, 7 years, right? But in the current world, that is not the case, right? In the current world, those devices are connected, and if they're connected, they're a surface for monetization, right? And at the end of the day, that's what companies will do, right? If they can monetize it, they will monetize it, right? And if that involves deploying software, iterating on that software, they will do it, right? So you need a deployment platform. So all of a sudden, embedded software needs to become more like embedded hardware. It needs to be modular, it needs to be Lego building blocks, right? And that's what we try to bring to the industry with Pantavisor.
And you know what's really cool? Basically, I was having a conversation with one of your engineers, Fernando, during the Developers Anonymous meetup that we had. I think it was towards the middle end of last month. And while we were kind of talking about the demo that he was going to showcase and everything, we were trying to identify what is one of those key things, those key differentiators that Pantavisor brings to the ecosystem, because there are other OTA products out there. There are other systems that you can go adopt, but the kind of overwhelming, I want to say consensus that we just settled on was that you think about. Let's start with this analogy, and you can tell me, Ricardo, if you think this analogy is just bogus, but this is how I looked at it. I was McDonald's, the cheeseburger at McDonald's. You go order a cheeseburger at McDonald's. Now imagine if every single cheeseburger sold around the world at McDonald's removed one pickle. Imagine if they just removed one pickle from those cheeseburgers. How many pickles would you save? As a McDonald's owner, right? As McDonald's, the owner of McDonald's. So now, if I remove one pickle from every cheeseburger every day, I'm going to save millions and millions and millions of pickles. Now, think about this as a device, right? Now, think about if you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of devices out there, and you're able to put the smallest, lowest resource consuming or lowest possible denominator in terms of a distro or an OS or whatever it is, this container, this Pantavisor container that you're putting on there, and you're able to remove that one USB port, or you're able to have this much less RAM or this much less storage space. You're removing that pickle, right? And you're saving a ton of money over time. So like if you have this low resource constrained operating system that you can put on there that you can run, well, I mean, essentially, you know, like you're able to now put smaller devices out there. You're able to update those devices seamlessly as well. You can do all the things you needed to do, but now you saved that pickle. Is that a stupid analogy?
No, not at all, right? I mean, you focus on your business logic, right? And that's where it's really at. You know, for this type of companies, I mean, you also have to keep in mind that these are companies that, you know, the big customers that can use this type of technology are people that are starting to sort of go into the software world, right? For them, it was a monster on the other side of the closet, right? Like, whereas for us, you know, software, embedded Linux and so on might be ubiquitous. For them, you know, using embedded Linux for more than just a very single purpose feature or function was alien, completely alien, right? And, you know, back in 2016, 15, 14, we were all sold this idea that, oh, IoT, everything's going to be like mega smart and connected and trillions of dollar market and this and that. It was like the blockchain or the AI of that year, right? And the truth is, what we see now in the industry is that only now are the big movers starting to dabble into that, right? Like starting to put that into their cycles. And their cycles are slow, right? It's not going to be until 2030 or something like that where you're going to see truly smart things happening in general compute, right? Like by general compute, I mean, you know, washing machines or things like this, right? Right now, you can go to CES, and then sure, of course, you'll see the mega flashy demo from Samsung or whatever, you know, talking about AI and this and so on. They're deploying applications, but you go to everyone's house and their fridge, you know, it's from 10 years ago, right? So, you know, like it's going to take a while for that technology to really come in, right? For the big movers. I think right now it has mostly, the past 5 years have been about supporting industry processes. So, you know, factory, manufacturing, you know, anything internal, but it hasn't been about consumer facing quality of life improvement, right? And that's where it's going to go, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years, right? We're going to focus on consumer electronics, not just put a speaker in my house, but rather make that speaker control my house, right? Or make it be my, you know, like my own personal something that I can configure and deploy stuff as I need, right? Depending on what other brands I'm interacting with, right? That's the next layer, right? That we might go into. And I think that's going to open up the world, you know, as we open up into consumer facing, then that's when explosions really start to happen, right? And we see it right now with all these things about, you know, AI and everything, you know, like being able to move payloads or move data or data processing to, you know, closer to the user. That's the dream, right? But nobody remembers that in order to do that, you need to orchestrate at scale, right? in connected devices, right? And then that's why solutions like ours, I think, are primed to be the, you know, the key there, right?
I love it. Yeah, no, I really like it. Robert, sorry, did you want to say something? Robert Quinn?
Oh, I was just totally agreeing with that. That's
awesome. So I have a fun question here for you, Ricardo. I'm gonna trickle. I'm gonna do some serious ones, and I'm gonna trickle in a fun one every now and then. So this fun one here is to kind of get to know you a little bit better, right? I mean, I don't know how old you are. I'd imagine you're maybe my age, but maybe you'll come up with some crazy thing that you worked on as your first embedded device or project. So I'm looking for what was your first embedded device or project that you ever worked on?
Well, the first was as I was saying early in the show, right? I think the Philips Nino was the first true, you know, complete jump in bed with an embedded device type of story, right?
It's called the Philips what?
Nino, Nino, right? It has multiple versions, but whatever earliest one you can find, which is black and white with some of the early versions of Windows CE, right?
Wow.
And the interesting thing about that is that it was running a MIPS PR31700 CPU, I think, or something like that. Yeah, that guy, right?
Oh, that's ancient.
You see it there, right? From 90, there it is, the PR31700 I just said, right? So that CPU was based on a R4000 core from MIPS Technologies, right?
Wow.
And it was interesting because, a group of people sort of like got around hacking it, right? It shipped with Windows CE, and then somebody found a way to do a very powerful overflow there and be able to dump core and hijack the boot vector of it, right? So we were able all of a sudden to then boot Linux on it, right? So there was a very early community of Linux MIPS that the Linux MIPS community I was talking about for SGI devices, right? They started dabbling into PDAs, right? Because if you remember in the early 2000s, PDAs were all the rage, right? The evolution of Palm Pilot was then in the 90s, right? And then everybody came up with their own. So that one, well, no, that's the Philips Velo, right? The Philips Velo has some competitors. One of which was the NEC Mobile Pro, right? That was, I would say, my second big thing that I dabbled in. Pretty much similar experience, right? It was about trying to get Linux running on that thing, right? Yeah. And well, it was a huge journey, but that was it, right? That was number one, and I still have it somewhere. I don't know where, but it's in some storage somewhere for sure.
Now this is a long time ago. What you're deceiving me because you look like a young guy. You must have been pretty young at this stage doing.
I was young back then. Yeah, I think I was 12 or something at the time.
Oh wow, dang. Okay, yeah. So you're having fun with this kind of stuff early.
You were involved in this at a young age.
I was, yeah. So that made it even weirder, right? Because we were talking to people all over the world, and going on IRC and on the different channels, just trying to engage with people. And this is a bunch of people that at the time for me they were old, right? They were maybe like 30 or 40 or something, working at all these companies, and they had this kid like, crawling up their laps, or like, hey, can you help me with this, right? But it was fun, right? And everybody was very welcoming, right? And that was the beauty of this type of communities is that at the end of the day, you have all the spectrum, right? You have people that might push real hard back, right? And be like, get these kids out of here. But you will have other people that are very more like that have that gift of teaching, right? And they like to bring people up in the concept, right? And in the context of what you're talking about, right? Because at the end of the day, it's something that is close to their heart. And I think, I don't know, they just have the gift, right, of engaging with younger people and trying to inspire them, right?
Absolutely.
We have some comments coming in here, so I want to read off some comments, and thank you, by the way, Ricardo, for sharing your history here on that. So first of all, for Michael Welling, he says, actually, Michael Welling's just telling us that we have the title wrong on our Twitch stream. Thank you, Michael. Yeah. So we're still figuring out how to link the StreamYard to Twitch, and so sometimes the titles do end up getting crossed there. But yeah, we'll fix that for sure. When in the post-production section. We have Synthana, who's saying, fantastic conversation about the future of the electronics industry. Awesome. Thank you. Mariano, who's saying, I'm in product development, product qualification, reliability for the past 30 years. Back in time, the mecca of IC was the Silicon Valley, where in the mecca now, and where is all the okay? This is a question. Okay, let me try to read
a question. Yeah.
Back in time, the mecca of IC was Silicon Valley. Where is the mecca now, and where are all the emerging companies? So maybe this one, Ricardo, are you able to answer this one? Do you have any insights, Ricardo, you or Robert?
I mean, I don't have huge insight on it. I would say one of the problems with this industry, and you see it right now, is that the incumbents, right, when it comes to, the IC market is very broad, right? It's not just embedded computing, right? It touches many areas, right? So, and the problem with the embedded IC market, let's say, is that it's a bit of an echo chamber that they've been selling the same thing for the past 20 years, and it works, right? And usually the customers are even the same, right? So it doesn't evolve very fast, right? So if anything, I would say the evolution, and you can see it even with things like Intel, right? I mean, Intel's crumbling apart, right? Yeah. Whatever the next generation of IC is right now, well, we have to say that it's certainly centered around AI, right? That's what it is, right? I mean, there's no other answer to it, right? I've seen hotspots in different areas over the past decade, right? Like, where all kinds of things, even with smartness around Wi-Fi, connectivity protocols, and things like that, which 3-4 years ago were all the rage, right? And then things died down, right? So I don't know, from a physical point of view, I don't think there's a mecca at the moment, right? What do you think, Robert Quinn, in this case, right?
No, I mean, not necessarily. It's funny. I was in having been doing what I was doing, I was with ISES, International Semiconductor Executive Summit, and we were all over the world. Like, I mean, I was in 7 countries in like 9 months. It was crazy, with all the different events and that we're doing around the world, and it's so globally. There's so many there's so many parts to it, right? And they come from so many different parts of the world. These phones that we carry with us every day are a conglomeration of 30 some odd countries coming together. And is there a single place that, is really generating all that? There's so many individualized hubs, I think, around the world that are focusing on super important technologies, and then bringing all those together. I think that's where. And that's the synergy I really want to see within the semiconductor industry that I write about a lot. That I want to see the universities, the corporations, the corporations working under one roof together. So sharing technology, sharing information, so that they can develop the next evolution of the next phase of technology. But how do you do that? You do that by working in conjunction with each other. These phones that we carry, all these devices, it's so important to see that, it's so many groups coming together to make them. And Jensen Wong was just talking about that the other day.
Sorry, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought that was
no. I'm done. Like, Jensen Wong was just talking about that the other day, that how important it is what he's doing, but how the conglomeration of everybody that's involved in what he's doing, and where they are today is because of that. So.
Yeah, so thank you both of you. I want to kind of like chime in myself. By the way, Mariano saying incumbents, that was the word he was looking for. And yes, so I mean, this always brings me back, and I don't know if on Beyond the Wafer I have mentioned this little story here yet, but you think about Isaac Newton's quote, right? Like, we build upon the shoulders of giants, or I would not have seen further had it not been by standing on the shoulders of giants. I remember I must have been like 20 years at this point now. I kind of like said, I like this quote. And one of my buddies, pretend this is just a regular old number 2 pencil. He held up this pencil to me and he was like, Robert, you can't build this pencil. No one can build this pencil alone. Like, no one can build this pencil alone. And I'm like, bullshit. like I'll build a pencil, right? He's like, well, where are you going to get the lead? Where are you going to get the rubber? Where are you going to get the wood? How are you going to carve the wood? Where are you going to get the paint? How are you going to carve the etchings into the side of how are you going to get the little metal thing that holds the eraser? And I started to think like, oh, well, I'll just go do this. I'll go do this. He's like, well, are you going to use a tool? Because if you use a tool, then someone helped you because someone made that tool. And so it's like, well, how are you going to go get to the place to go get the lead? Are you going to fly there? Are you going to walk there? Because if you fly there, someone built the plane. And then there were tens of thousands of people who had to contribute to the building of that plane. And so I started to think like, holy crap, I can't build a pencil. like I can't build a pencil by myself. And this leads me to basically say, like, when you think about all of the things, like, what Robert Quinn just said, what Ricardo just said is like, where's the Mecca? Where's this all happening? I feel like the Mecca is almost like where we perceive it to be. It's like relative to what the rhetoric is telling us it is, right? So like the Mecca right now, we say Silicon Valley. It's like, but I mean, like, the television was only invented in the United States, but like it was invented by people who were brought here or who immigrated in from all over the world, right? And so it's like, that's just because we call it the Mecca, or because it's just decided that way by a group of people who said it. Anyways, this is me getting into conspiracy theories.
No, you're right. I mean, Silicon Valley is where the VCs have their headquarters, right? But it's not necessarily where the work gets done, and we know that by now, right? Especially with most of these companies, right? So it's all over the place, like you're saying, right?
If you're talking about the CEO, the VC guys, it's San Francisco. If you're talking about the chip guys, it's Arizona. It just totally depends.
Awesome. Well, okay, yeah. So yeah, we have some more questions here. I have now. I want to do one more fun question here with you. This is going to be what I call the running over my cables. I'm going to call this the rapid fire round. Okay. So Ricardo, I have 5 questions for you. You just want to give me short, quick answers as quickly as possible. And I'm going to make you right here. All right. So 5 quick questions. Just rattle them off. Question number 1. What's your favorite text editor or IDE?
If it's C, it's Vim. Otherwise, VS Code.
VS Code, yeah. Okay, awesome. Next one. Bare metal or virtualized?
Bare metal.
Okay, I'm going to ask you little questions about these afterwards. What's your favorite open source logo?
Pantacor.
Pantacor. All right, cool. We'll have to share the Pantacor logo in just a second. What's your favorite developer experience that you can remember? That one that you just went through, you're like, that was a magical developer experience.
Well, I would have to say, and this goes even back in time, right? It's when I did in the late 90s. Actually, it was the application that you use to do the very early Lego Mindstorms programming kit, right? So that one was really nice, but it had its limitations. And then some people came out with a C derivative called not quite C, NQC, to write code for the Mindstorms kit. And that was really nice. It was very well documented. You could do everything with it. And I was a kid that had no idea how to write code. And I jumped into that one, and I was able to do it, right? And, I was like, this is well done, right?
Nice. And then the last one here I have is, what's your favorite snack food while developing?
Beer.
Beer, yes. Yes. Yeah, regarding developer experiences, I have to say, I've been working real closely with the folks at the Hack Pack. If you've ever heard of like Crunch Labs or Mark Rober's Crunch Labs Hack Packs, they make these little subscription boxes. Okay, I have them I'm actually building one right here now. And these little subscription boxes are so amazing. Actually here I have one that's built. So like their developer experience is quite amazing. I mean, like here's one of them that's built already. This is a little label maker, but it comes with this little manual here. And in the manual, right when you open the box, technically it has like this QR code that you can go to. It takes you to like the digital version of walking through everything, inventory list, everything. These were pretty awesome developer experiences, I must say. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like talk about this because I've had a lot of fun building these out the last few months.
We need those in like every hands of like every 12-year-old kid out there, like learning how to build, right?
Yeah. I actually have a subscription, not for this one, but another one. I'm not going to do a shout out, but for a cool. Different one, but it's more focused in like learning toys and so on for my two kids, the different ages. And this is actually quite interesting, right? Because it's more focused towards engineering, right? As simple as that. And they have it from, I think it's 6 years old upwards, something like that.
And so, do you code that as well, like Robert? Yeah. Like, are you coding that as well?
Yeah. So like you can take these. I mean, like this is the thing is like what I'm talking about possibly doing here, Ricardo, is I'm actually thinking about doing some sort of like
that's the adult one. Yeah.
Yeah. But so like there's this one, I have like my little rocket back here, right? So there's a little rocket turret. I have a domino robot. I'm building the sand garden right now. But yeah, you can hack them. They're Arduinos, right? And so then you go into the Arduino IDE, you can make it do all sorts of crazy other cool stuff. It's funny. I actually did MW for Michael Welling. He was on one of the other little live streams I did.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so
and they have all different devices. You said that's a label printer, and then they have
it's a label printer. Yeah, you take a little marker and you put the marker in here, and then you have to unscrew this. You put the little marker in. You turn it on. You tell it what you want it to write, and then it kind of goes up and down and prints on the little piece of tape here. It's pretty interesting.
Nice.
To go back to the Lego Mindstorms point that I was making in '98, I think this was, or '99. What the most important project I remember from that time was one that you could not build with the software that Lego brought, right? But rather with this other thing, you had to write the code in C, right? And then somebody put out a project and all the instructions to build it, and it was a scanner, right, and printer. So it would use the light sensor just to scan, shades of gray, and then they would, go pixel by pixel scan. And then on the other side, just like Robert is saying here, it would hold a pencil, right down. Or it was kind of like a pressure marker type of thing, and it would do the same thing, right? It would copy and replicate on the other side, and I thought that was fantastic at the time. I saw it and I was like, wow, this is like next level stuff, right? That was really cool, right? And it's amazing to see that you could order kits like that now just to get started, right?
I gotta come visit Robert's man cave here, and like whenever.
I think this is a Lego Mindstorms. This is a Lego education kit.
Yeah, but those are the new ones, right? That's what they rebranded into, right? They killed the Mindstorms brand maybe 2-3 years ago, the last kit they had, and now it's about that. So you'll see that in all schools, right? My kids in their robotics class at school is that same thing, right? And it's very cryptic to buy if you want it for your own home. Like you have no idea what it is that you need to get, right? So it's really tailored towards schools and institutions. And I don't like that. You cannot just get it for you, right?
Yeah, the strange thing that I'm noticing here, I never built this. It's literally unopened. But you can see like their little sensors. They're Legos. Like, so they're actually outfitted with Legos. So even like the microcontroller, which looks like down here, I have no idea what the microcontroller is in there. They're just going to tell me what to do with it.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
How cool is that? You know, it was funny. I had my daughter had her birthday party, and a little boy attended to the party, and he gave her a little 3D printed toothbrush holder. That I was like, how cool is that? Like, and my daughter's like, what's that? I was like, it's a 3D printed toothbrush holder. Like he made it on his little 3D printer at home. But it's so cool seeing how we can, we can educate and learn all these things.
Well, I think right now in school, it's a big topic in school right now. There's robotics classes everywhere and so on. So I think the question is not so much, about putting the kids in those places, because I think they will naturally find their road to that. It's how to differentiate, because you could say that back in the day, we would also find ourselves into like some spaces, right? Which whatever the spaces looked at the time, right? Like some people maybe at the time was about paying more attention into computer lab or something like that, right? Which at the time was, like very, what you would do back then was like learn to type fast, those type of things, right? But just by getting close to that, you would then be exposed to more interesting things, right? But you would have to have the drive to differentiate, right? So how to push current generations to find the drive to differentiate, even if they're, having robotics classes in school. Okay, well, then everybody will have robotics class in school. So how do you differentiate? Go one level deep into trying to learn what's happening there. Like go beyond the framework, right? Beyond the framework that is being beyond the wafer, beyond the framework that is being presented for you, right? And dig deeper, right? It's like, well, I actually want to make a robot that doesn't. It's not just these 5 options. I want to build something else, right? How do I do it, right? So I think that's where the key lies, right? Like, as long as kids can find that information, we still have a future.
Yeah.
I have a nonprofit organization called SIMU, Semiconductor Industry Mobile Education Unit. We're trying to raise funds to build a 52-foot semi, an 18-wheeler that can go from schools around the nation. And the walls will pop out like an RV, and you tour 700 students a day through this unit, and give the kids an Disney World experience of I learned about semiconductors, or I learned about software, I learned about this stuff, and give them that Disney World experience. So it's exciting, because I'm sorry, we really figure how to make this really boring sometimes. And how to make this really boring. That's really what I want to do, and then give them the excitement and build that up. And so then you can put them into a pipeline, and you can, send all these kids all the way into high school where they can take classes on all this, and then they can go and taking college classes and all the way through the whole ecosystem. But yeah, it's it really is. It's exciting, but how do you give the kids that excitement, right?
Yeah. Well, so guys, we're down. Like, time freaking flies. I have to say, I cannot believe how fast this hour has gone by, and I have to get at least a few more of these questions out. I know Robert Quinn has at least one more. So Ricardo, let's try to keep these maybe to like 1 minute answers if possible. Right. So question number 1: what kind of developers or teams would benefit the most from using Pantavisor?
So any embedded architecture teams at any company that builds consumer electronics that are looking to explore their next generation architecture. Next generation architecture usually involves going from monolithic software to modular software that needs to be connected, that needs to be updated at scale, and where you need to add more features down the road, right? There's a lot of teams doing that right now, doing the review, the research, and where they're being asked by their line managers to literally go and explore, like, what can we do? Should we build something ourselves, or is there a solution out there that can be used for this? Those are the teams that really, have found us so far.
Awesome. The next one here I would say is how do you handle developer workflows, or how would a developer handle workflows across different architectures using Pantavisor?
Well, I mean, we're using containerization. So by now, I think it's the technology to build containers across different architectures is very mature, right? As long as the code is portable, then, at the end of the day, things just kind of work, right? There's always a little bit of fidgeting you need to do here and there, but things just mostly work. I mean, the higher level the application, the more that it just works, right? The closer you are to the electronics itself, then the more you need to pay attention to what you're toggling here and there, right? But for the most part, what we end up seeing is that only like 10 to 50% of an embedded solution software stack is very close to the hardware, right? And that's where the benefit really shows up with solutions like this, because the other 85% is maybe just a connectivity stack, right? The connectivity stack will just, rely on the fact that Linux exposes the right things to you, right? Or some kind of multimedia stack. Well, same applies, right? So you can make that once, and it will apply across your different architectures. As long as you can cross build, then you're golden, right?
Right.
Awesome. This is perfect. So, Robert, did you want to ask what about this collaboration, semiconductor collaboration might look?
Yeah.
Ricardo, did you want us to wait and ask that later in a?
Oh, I meant later, as in like I just wanted to hear about the truck that he's talking about. Right?
Oh yeah.
See if we can help somehow. That's
that'd be great. I wanted to ask you, being the semiconductor guy, I want to ask you, what does your dream collaboration with the semiconductor company look like?
Well, that question it might take more than a minute, so I'll take two.
Yeah.
So the way I see it, the semiconductor industry right now is for embedded, right? For consumer electronic, is very focused on just churning more chips out, right? And closing deals at the million chip scale and things like this. They're not so much worried about what value do they actually add on top of the silicon. But when Pantacor consults with companies that are, planning for their next gen and they need to do hardware selection, I'm going to be very straightforward. Like, there is no difference between, SoC manufacturer A, B, or C, right? It's all about what price you can negotiate down, because they will be able to build, custom made whatever you need, right? It's about a price conversation, but there really is no differentiation value. Like, at this point in time, it's like they're selling screws or cables or, or PCBs, right? It's just bare materials. And it's sad to say that, because, the technology within is massive, right? But they're not differentiating. There's nothing new there, right? It's the same stack, right? You have a memory controller, you have some Wi-Fi stack, you have this thing, you have the other thing. How many cores do you want? 2, 4, 8, how much SRAM do you want? So the conversation ends there, right? It's not about what you can build on top. So the ideal collaboration would be, well, what else can be provided, right? Because it's about building the whole product, right? If the SoC manufacturer is placed at the core of the value chain of any of these big companies that really, build consumer electronics, if they come with a solution that solves these base level problems of how do I modularize my software architecture, how do I make it next generation, if the silicon vendor can bring that to you, then that's game over for the competitors, right? Because I know from within that the client will go with the guy that is giving them the software solution, right? Yeah. Some have started thinking about them, but some are just, Stone Age still, right?
Right. That's good.
Yeah. So added value, basically. I mean, like, this is
added value, right?
It's all about added value. Okay. So I do have one last question here. I want to say, like, Pantavisor, Pantacor. If there was like this cool community driven project, actually, this is a 2-part question. So number one is, there's a developer out there watching this, whether live or on demand right now, and they say, like, I want to get involved. How could I get involved with Pantacor? How could I, start using Pantavisor? Like, what would be that call to action that you would say, like, this is where you go. This is that one-stop shop right now for that developer looking to get involved?
Well, I mean, what we're putting most of our time right now is into our Yocto work, right? To really integrate with Yocto. But the way to, let's say, engage with our team is to, right back at you, Rob, to go to DevEco, right? Try to channel yourself, palm yourself through DevEco, because that's where you're going to find some of our entry material, and where you're going to make some very quick introductions. Because at the end of the day, for this type of projects, it's really about getting to talk to someone real fast, right? It's not so much about reading a lot of material. It's about engaging in conversation and getting sort of like mentored into whatever it is you want to work with, right?
Yeah. So what Ricardo's saying is like, so DevEco, we have several, I want to say at least a couple Pantacor engineers in there. One of course is Fernando, who's been helping us and who participated in our Developers Anonymous meetup. That's right there, DevEco Discord. So we actually have a Pantacor channel in there. You can go hang out with us. You can ask questions. You can do all sorts of stuff there. But also, I mean, like just heading on over to pantavisor.io and learning a little bit more about what Pantavisor is and possibly getting started on that. So definitely some cool stuff to check out. Last but not least, I want to say, if there was a cool project out there, Ricardo, that like, you know, someone could go and start building right now, what would be something like that you'd just love to see a real world, real life use case in action using Pantavisor? If there is something, or you just want people to dream up and see what they come up with?
I mean, so I think so Starlink seeded the idea of putting compute on orbit, right? And having general purpose compute in orbit is a complicated topic, right? And it's a topic where embedded plays a huge part, because orbit is about being as nimble as you can be, right? So if I could put, you know, if Pantavisor could be used to bring general compute to orbit, like for example, China just announced this huge sort of like, you know, cloud, whatever compute project that they're going to put in orbit, right? If this goes somewhere and people start replicating that, and it's really about modular software deployment to orbit, well, that's where I would like to see Pantavisor going for sure, right? I would throw the whole company into that if, you know, an opportunity arose.
And Pantavisor into space.
Absolutely.
All right. No, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. Robert, we got to close this out. Ricardo, yep. I'll start by saying my thanks. Thanks to you, Ricardo, for joining. Thanks to my co-host here, you know, like the man who makes this all happen, Robert Quinn. And then thank you, everyone who's watching either live or on demand later. Appreciate you very much. If you do enjoy this, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to either, you know, the YouTube channel or the LinkedIn channel, or if you're watching on Twitch as well. Sorry about the name. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Ricardo, thank you. Appreciate you all very much. I'll let Robert close this out, though. Ricardo, any last words from you, and then Robert can close it out.
Just the same. Thank you guys for having me. You know, I hope this really goes, you know, all the way Beyond the Wafer. All the best wishes to the program, and hopefully we can be here, you know, again in the future, right?
Anytime.
Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. Thank you for my host, Robert Wolf, and Beyond the Wafer. DevEco and Pantacor and all the organizations coming together to make this happen today. Join us in what is it, another 2 weeks or so, Robert? And
yes, sir.
We'll have another show, and we'll be dropping a teaser on who that next guest is going to be. But keep an eye out for it, and look forward to seeing all of you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Ricardo, see you in a little bit. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.